Now, from Wish TV, your local news source, this is All Indiana Politics.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome to another edition of All Indiana Politics. I'm Phil Sanchez. The 2023 legislative session is officially in the books. Lawmakers wrapped up their work in the early hours of Friday morning after a marathon session. News 8's government reporter Garrett Bergquist explains why both sides are claiming some victories.
State lawmakers worked into the early morning hours of Friday finalizing the state budget. Governor Holcomb said he got pretty much everything he asked for. The end of the 2023 session gave Governor Holcomb plenty to celebrate.
In my drawer, I've kept the handout that we distributed at Liberty Park Elementary School back in early January before the members came back into this budget session. And every initiative in some form or fashion has been checked. So these two agendas, one before the session and one after, are one and the same.
Lawmakers boosted K-12 education spending by nearly $1.5 billion. They expanded eligibility for On My Way Pre-K to 150% of the federal poverty line. They capped property tax rates for 2024 to head off rising property taxes. And they enacted legislation to require county health departments to provide a uniform set of core services in exchange for extra money.
Governor, the legislature consistently undercut you on public health funding. They went 75, 150. You were 100 plus, 200 plus. Was that a missed opportunity, particularly given the revenue report?
Look at the investments that are made in stockpiles. Look at the investments that are made in data analytics. Look at the investments that are made in childhood screenings. Look at the different buckets, and then once you add it all up, it's huge.
Despite their small numbers, Democrats notched up a few legislative wins as well. Among them, a measure to automatically enroll anyone eligible for the 21st Century Scholars Program. They also passed legislation to require mental health and wellness training for first responders and to create a bone marrow donor recruitment program. But Senate Minority Leader Greg Taylor says he's disappointed by the expansion of school choice vouchers. And he doesn't like the way conservative social causes again took center stage, such as the ban on gender transition care for minors.
Listen, we fought hard to stop some of those cultural war bills from coming through. Now, some of them got some legs, but I'm going to tell you, we fought hard and made sure that Indiana, if they're going to do it, they're going to have to be accountable to the citizens.
The governor will have 7 days to act on the legislation lawmakers sent him once he officially takes delivery of those bills. At the State House, I'm Garrett Bergquist for Wish TV, wishtv.com, and like us on Facebook.
Meanwhile, Washington's budget battle is heating up. The Republican-controlled U.S. House on Wednesday passed a bill to raise the debt ceiling and cut spending. Congressman Rudy Yoakum serves on the House Budget Committee. However, Scott Sanders spoke with him about that bill.
Want to make welcome, fresh off one of the top stories of the week in Washington, Congressman Rudy Yoakum. Representative, thanks for being with us today. As we speak, you're wrapping things up, but likely we'll have questions from your constituents about the budget questions and the debt ceiling limit seem to be tangled together because of the conversation in Washington and the proposal that Republicans in the House have put forward. You have a front row seat to all this. You're on the budget committee. Take us inside that conversation. How difficult was it to get your party all in relatively one piece to where we ended up? And then how much of it all were Democrats involved in that conversation?
Well, first of all, Scott, thanks for having me on today. And you're right, these are difficult conversations, but the reason the conversations are difficult is because they're important. And as of today, House Republicans have done the responsible thing, which is not what we usually do. What usually happens, and you've seen this in the past, is we wait until we hit the debt ceiling the day of, and then there's a massive negotiation at the last minute. The whole country's on edge. Instead of taking that approach, we've passed a debt ceiling package out of the House 75 to 90 days early, and that gives us time to negotiate the deal, which we should do in good faith with the president and with the Senate. And so I'm proud of our Republican conference for coming together and getting this package negotiated and out of the House.
It certainly comes as no surprise to you that as soon as this plan came out, the administration was ready with some talking points of ways it would affect each individual state and the people within it. For instance, in Indiana, the claim is 182,000 students with disabilities may face fewer opportunities and fewer support services. Mental health services would be cut as well. What do you say to families in Indiana about the information like that?
Well, let's talk about what the package actually does. So rather than smoke and mirrors, let's talk about what it actually does. This package rolls discretionary spending back 1 year to 2022 levels, which is still substantially higher than what we were in pre-pandemic levels back in 2018 and 19. So we literally only roll it back 1 year. And then from here, we control the growth of the federal government by 1% per year on the discretionary side for the next 10 years. That is not, as Democrats would like us to believe, is not a catastrophic event. We're literally going back 1 year, which is still demonstrably higher than where we were in pre-pandemic levels.
I guess as much as you can give a sense, how much of what you've put forth as a chamber do you expect to finally become law? The Senate's made it clear, at least the Democrats in the Senate made it clear it's a non-starter there. You have pointed out this is aimed as being a negotiation start, a starting point for it. So how much of it in the end do you feel like can stay intact?
Well, what we'd like to see is go to the next step in the process. And so there are two potential paths from here. One path is the House leaders, the Senate leaders, and the president sit down, come together, negotiate a deal that everyone can live with. That's a path that I'd like to see. The other path is that the Senate take this bill, which we are sending them, they take up the bill, they can either pass it as is, or they can have their own debate about the merits of each of the individual components of the bill, file amendments to the bill, and then send it back to us for further consideration. So one of those two paths, both of which are perfectly acceptable, should happen, and one of those two paths should happen immediately.
All right, coming up, Indiana's best political team unpacks the 2023 legislative session. Welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we welcome back two members of Indiana's best and Republican Mario Masalamani. We've got a lot to get to this week, all right, guys? So let's begin with the legislative session that just wrapped up. School choice vouchers will be expanded to anyone to 400% of free and reduced price meal line. Mario, let's begin with you. Does that violate the original intent of the school voucher program, in your opinion?
I don't believe so. I think that what this has shown from the initial start of the school voucher program is that it's been a great success. We have so many people using the school voucher program to make sure that they are allowing their kids an opportunity to get them the proper education they need. If you look at the voucher program and also the charter program, you're seeing a historic amount of minority kids being involved and using the voucher program and also the charter program to allow their families to get the proper education that Hoosier families and Hoosier kids deserve.
Laura, even in states with voucher programs like this, the overwhelming majority of families stick with traditional public schools. Are teachers' concerns about vouchers kind of overblown?
I don't know if I'd say they're overblown. I think there is a lot of concern about it because it does take away from the traditional public schools. And I think that is really concerning to folks who are choosing to invest in and want to make sure that these traditional public schools are doing well. I think when we talk a lot about, especially here in Marion County and the donut counties, I think we have a different understanding of what education and what school options look like. But when you go out into a rural county, those school corporations, those public school corporations, which are traditional public schools, they often are the only school corporation or one of the few that are educating students. And so we have to be really mindful that this also doesn't become a urban and rural divide in this state, because I think that is something that we have to be really concerned about. Yeah. I think it does go further than probably what it was intended. And I know we had some legislators this year who expressed concern about it. But I think it's going to be, it'll be very interesting to see how people utilize it going forward.
That's a good point. I want to unpack a few more items from the state budget. Okay, so pre-K eligibility is expanded. The Medicaid reimbursement rates go up. There's funding for low-interest housing infrastructure loans. Laura, we'll go to you on this one. Quite a few Democratic wish list items made it into the final budget. Was this a win for legislative Democrats?
Well, I think there were a lot of wins for legislative Democrats. I mean, I think we focus a lot of times on the negative. For example, we talk about the slate of hate bills that came up targeting our LGBTQ neighbors. But when you think about it, we had a bill from Mitch Gore impacting local prosecutors. Senator Shelley Yoder had some really impactful legislation, as did Representative Earl Harris. So I think that there are wins there, and I think it's really important that we also realize in a supermajority, those wins are incredibly important, and it's because they're working across party lines to get things done.
Should we be surprised, Mario, how many of those items Republicans got behind?
I don't think so. I think that at the end of the day, both Republicans and Democrats believe that their role at the State House is to try and help Hoosier families. And, there was a huge expansion of mental health funding. I think that it's a great example of both sides wanting to ensure that Indiana people struggling with mental health issues are treated in the hospitals and not in our jail system, because that doesn't serve any of us. Additionally, I think that there's also been an importance in making sure that we allow for and provide women with proper health care for themselves and their families. And I think that was done in Bill 1006. I think that there was a lot of great things that were done, generational impact. If you look, there's about $3 billion over the next 2 years that's going to go towards funding from K through 12. And that was because of both Republicans and Democrats. Republicans wanted to make sure that the funding was done, and Democrats were for it. We've gotten rid of textbook fees that impact low-income families. It also got rid of a lot of the extracurricular fees that impact poor families from being allowed to allow their kids to participate in extracurricular activities. So I think there was some generational impact here in this last budget, with $3 billion investment through K through 12 that I think is going to be extraordinary and helpful for Hoosier families.
We'll see what happens on that. I want to go ahead, jump in there, Laura. Go ahead. Yep.
There's one other thing I think we should definitely highlight, and this is something that has been generational, has had a major impact on people, and has been bipartisan from the beginning, and that is the automatic enrollment of eligible students in the 21st Century Scholars Program that Representative Earl Harris championed. That started in the the Evan Bayh administration, and that's where it came from. And more Hoosier kids have gone to college because of this, and I think that's something that we all should really be proud of. There are, like I said, there are moments of frustration, but something like this is, as Mario said, going to have a generational impact on Hoosier families and their quality of life.
I have less than a minute left in this segment. Quickly, though, an answer from both of you. Did we miss anything, in your opinion, from both sides? Laura, we'll start with you.
I think we spent far too much time on banning books when we should be monitoring big tech and banning TikTok, frankly. I think we also could have invested more in public health. I think that was a big miss for us.
Mario?
I think the legislature did a phenomenal job this session. We gave more money for mental health. We provide more money for schools. We additionally gave money at one point, or $133 million in matching funds to the rural areas to improve their bridges and their road systems. So I think there was a lot in this budget that was helpful for our communities.
Okay, well, you guys are going to stick around. We'll talk more national politics coming up after the break. We'll be right back. And welcome back to All Indiana Politics. Democrat Laura Beck and Republican Mario Massolemani still with us now. Hard to believe, and I know I said we would talk national politics, but we'll stay local here for a moment. Primary day, guys, almost here. So we'll start with the big one. The mayor of Indianapolis, Democrat incumbent Joe Hogsett, faces a challenge from state representative Robin Shackelford. The Republican side includes Jefferson Shreve, Abdul Hakim Shabazz, and James Jackson. Laura, how worried should Hogsett be about losing the primary?
I think Mayor Hochstadt's going to be fine. I think he's absolutely going to be fine. He's got a really strong operation behind him. He has raised an incredible amount of money, and that will make him incredibly competitive going forward. I don't think he has anything really to be worried about. I know Robin Shackelford, who has been challenging him, has run a really spirited campaign as well. But at this point in time, I mean, we always say it all boils down to turnout, but I think the mayor has a lot of support behind him. We're definitely seeing folks showing up at early vote, and I think a lot of those folks are coming out to put him over the top.
And on the Republican side of things, Mario, Jefferson Shreve launched a TV ad blitz more reminiscent of a general election, as you very well know. Does this surprise you, and how do you assess his chances?
I think he's got a great chance. I think Indianapolis is difficult for Republicans, but if they have a great message and they have the funding necessary to promote that message, they've got a shot. And every time I live in Hamilton County, and I see his commercials every time I'm on watching TV. He has been hitting Hogsett from the start on crime, on poor roads, on a variety of issues that I think actually will help Hogsett's opponent in the primary. And I'm curious to see how this translates in the general, but Jefferson Shreve is putting his money where his mouth is. He is spending the money to show the contrast between what he believes Indianapolis deserves and what Joe Hogsett has done so far in his tenure.
And Mario,
Bill,
go ahead, Laura. Go ahead. Yep.
Well, what I was going to say about that is what I think his approach is really interesting in terms of how he is running more of a general election campaign in the primary, because it'll be interesting to see if he's putting his money where his mouth is in his organizing and getting people out to vote. It's all about getting your primary voters out to vote for you. I mean, that's really what it's all about. And I'm not 100% sure that he's going to do that, because I think Abdul has so many relationships and has such a strong connection in the community, especially among those kind of primary voters, that I think that we might be surprised. So I'm betting on Abdul.
Yeah, okay, well, we'll see what happens there. Mario, we want to move on to Hamilton County, your neck of the woods.
Sorry,
3 Republicans are running to succeed retiring Carmel Mayor Jim Brainerd, as you very well know. Brainerd has endorsed one of them. What issues will tip the balance in favor of one candidate or another, Mario?
I think, really quickly, to Laura's point, voter turnout is going to be very low in this upcoming race. And so even in Carmel, it's all going to be about getting your supporters out there. I was just looking at the numbers right now in Hamilton County. We have 7% turnout in early voting. That's atrocious.
It was 13% statewide, by the way, Mario, last time. So
it's very low. And so it is critical, to Laura's point, that you get your supporters out there. And this is going to be a dogfight in Carmel. We have 3 qualified, great candidates, all having different messages that I think will resonate with voters. And I look forward to seeing who comes out on top on this, because at the end of the day, as Laura said, it will be if you can energize your base to make sure that you get your voter turnout out. Because with 7 to 10 to potentially 12% turnout, it's all going to be about grassroots and turning out your supporters.
Laura, Carmel has long been a Republican stronghold, as you very well know, but it has been trending purple. So how does the winner of this primary affect Democrat Miles Nelson's chances in November?
Well, I think, I think that the benefit that somebody like Miles Nelson has in a primary situation is he doesn't have a primary. So whoever comes out of this primary, as Mario so aptly put it, it's going to be a dogfight. So whoever ever comes out of the dogfight now has to run in the general, and they have to heal wounds, because it appears that it's not something that's terribly pleasant among the 3 of them. They've got to heal wounds. They've got to come together. They've spent a lot of money beating each other up. There's a lot of ill will. So he has a head start out of the gate. And I think because he doesn't have to go through a primary, he's got plenty of money. He's able to continue raising money and really delivering.
Hey, you know what? I have 30 seconds left. I just want to jump in. One final question for both of you. Which race haven't we talked about that you'll be watching closely come Tuesday night? Laura, go ahead.
I think that Breanne Delaney for council and Monroe Gray for council. I'll be watching that one really close.
Mario?
I'll be watching the Westfield mayor's race. Andy Cook, who has done so much to transform Westfield, has now stepping down. And Jake Gilbert, you've got Scott Willis, and you have a third opponent, Kristen Berkman. It's going to be interesting to see how that race comes out.
Okay, we'll see what happens. Good to see you both. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay.
We'll be right back. And thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics. We'll be back here next Sunday morning at 9:30, and be sure to tune in for our primary night coverage this Tuesday. Have a great